I stood beneath the dismal fluorescent lights of a cardiology ward. As a junior nurse, I eagerly accepted the schedule that placed me on a string of night shifts over the holidays, though not without a small, persistent ache. The ward had been intentionally thinned, and only the most unstable patients remained behind. Instead of the usual full patient load, I had just one. Tim was well known to all of us. He'd been there for weeks, certainly long enough for his story to have settled into the hum of the unit. In his 30s, he seemed far too young to be awaiting a heart transplant, and yet there he was, as was I, the two of us reluctant company on Christmas Eve. Despite my yearning to be elsewhere, I worked as I always did, attentive, careful, and precise, busying myself with the usual routines of patient care, believing that excellence itself created meaning. A week later, Tim received the gift of a heart. When he returned to the unit to say goodbye, his gratitude expressed more through tears than words. We all shared in the immense joy of that success. The impact we'd had on Tim's life was undeniable. It was seismic, quantifiable, visible, even heroic. This was a story worth telling, the kind that affirms the purpose of one's work. About a year later, another patient arrived on the unit. Like Tim, Brian became woven into the fabric of our days, waiting for that same precious gift. On yet another night shift, the ring of the telephone broke the stillness around 2 a.m., and with it came the news we'd all been waiting for. Brian had a heart. There was a donor in another city. The air ambulance was already being dispatched. Joy ignited the unit like a current, and we practically floated down the long hallway to wake him. Hope released. Brian tearfully called his family and began gathering his belongings. Amidst the flurry of activity that ensued to ready Brian for transport, we nearly missed the second phone call. The air ambulance had been canceled. There was a problem with the donor heart. It couldn't be used. This time, I walked the hallway alone, my heavy footsteps burdened with a message I didn't know how to carry. Weeks later, while entering the hospital for an early morning shift, I heard the overhead call for a code on my unit. Brian did not survive. Suddenly, I found myself faced with a truth I couldn't reconcile. After Tim, I'd come to believe that effort and outcome were somehow aligned, and that impact, real impact, had to be seismic to be meaningful, something you could see and measure. By those standards, we had failed. And in that failure, what difference did we make? What impact did we have on Brian's life? Years passed. I left bedside nursing and entered clinical research. The pace here was slower, affording the opportunity to get to know patients beyond their acute health crisis. This is how I came to know Frank. Frank was a gift, a genuine North Star. In his 80s, he exuded the quiet humility and contentment of a life well lived. Over the course of the 5-year study, our research encounters evolved into something beyond just procedural, feeling more like companionship than nursing care. At our last study visit, Frank handed me an envelope. His handwritten letter brought unexpected clarity. In trembling script, he delivered a master class on the meaning of impact. "I'm sure you treat all your patients the same," he wrote, "but you made me feel as though you really cared about me." Finally, I understood what I'd missed all those years ago. Not everything that touches a life announces itself. Sometimes it whispers.